Well, we're going to now talk about project management advisory across the entire Microsoft 365 solution stack. So we're going to talk about what that all means in a second, but you're going to see typically throughout your organization and some of the projects that you're managing, you're going to see that there's a lot of different tools that you're using. Most organizations aren't just using one tool, and you can use multiple tools to increase your PPM maturity. So let's get into this. So I know that there's a lot of familiar faces out there, but just in case this is your first time coming to the webinar, again, welcome, and we really appreciate it. Just 5 seconds about us. We are a Microsoft Gold Project and Portfolio Management Partner. The name of the organization is Trusted IT Group, and you can think of us in really 3 key areas. We're providing thought leadership to the PPM community through webinars like this, in-person events, which we're going to start to ramp up. You know, everyone's going back to school, so that means that we're about to go back to work again. Project Management 365, so there's configurations and enhancements for the entire Microsoft 365 project management stack. And then we have our managed services, which is a really one-of-a-kind experience where we give 24/7 365 support that includes trainings, assessments, phone, email, remote support. There's a lot of benefits that come with that. So some of the services that we offer, and this is going to be, you know, just the last little slide over here that's a little salesy, but we're going to talk today about a section of our managed services, and then we're going to talk about this Microsoft Cloud Solution Provider that we've just become. So now what we can do is now, if you worked with us in the past, we typically didn't offer Microsoft licensing, we just offered the professional services for the implementations. Now feel free to come to us because for the licensing needs as well. We just became a Microsoft Cloud Solution Provider, which means that we can provide Microsoft licenses for all the solutions that you see over here. Feel free to get quote estimates from us, and we'll try to get you with the best price for the solution. Okay, one thing that I would like to remind everybody is that we're currently conducting a 2017 benchmarking project and portfolio risk management survey. What we're doing is it's a really quick 60-second 11-question survey, which you probably saw a couple emails about. We really encourage you to help us out so that we can get a pulse on this PPM community and understand, you know, what are the certain practices that you have within your organization as far as risk management. We're going to take those answers, we're going to come up with a nice survey, a nice report. We're going to distribute it so that you can now, you know, take this and start to implement some of the ideas in this report in your own organization. So again, following this webinar, I'm going to be sending out another reminder to take the survey if you haven't already, and we really encourage you to participate. So let's get on to the actual content over here, and let's see if I can do this in the next 50 minutes. So we have, as part of our managed services includes this ongoing support that we're telling you about. But one of the key benefits is that we do 4 quarterly PPM capabilities assessments. And what we do is we check on all these key competencies that you see here in your upper right-hand corner, from PM tools and risk management, etc., all the way through professional development. And what we do then is we grade them against the adoption level and the maturity level. And then what we do is we ask a series of questions, we do a series of stakeholder interviews, and then we come up with recommendations on how you can actually improve your PPM maturity by introducing new solutions or by, you know, just increasing capabilities. So the benefit of this is if you're getting this on a quarterly basis, you start with the first quarter report and assessment, and then we'll end up at the Q4 assessment, and you should be able to see the growth of the PPM maturity. So again, by doing that, you can go ahead and show the executive leadership the value that you're bringing to the organization by being more mature. So let's get into this, and for the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking about all these key capabilities and what Microsoft solutions can help you increase that maturity. So let's get into it right now. The first we're going to be talking about is PPM tools. So again, the different projects are going to require different tools. We have a whole big ecosystem that we could choose from and a lot of PM tools, and we can really help out many different methodologies. So let's just introduce some of these solutions over here, and you're going to catch the flow and the rhythm of which this presentation is going to be. So first we're going to talk about Microsoft Project. Of course, Microsoft Project will help you really optimize your project portfolio and to achieve all the goals with Microsoft PPM. We'll show some screenshots on what that look like. I'm willing to bet that most in this audience know what Microsoft PPM is. Lesser known is probably Dynamics 365 PSA or Project Service Automation. And this is what you can use to run your project-based business more productively when you transition from a sales opportunity and deliver that all the way through the contracted engagement. So what that means is you're going to be using this project service automation if you're selling projects. Okay, it's less for internal projects, it's more for customer-facing projects, which still exists. And the next one is Visual Studio Team Services, VSTS. This right here provides all the tools that you need to be able to manage agile teams and also develop code at the same time. And I just felt that it was important for me to also put Microsoft Planner out there, because there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of customers been asking us on what Microsoft Planner actually does, and this is a really great lightweight project management tool. It allows you to really create and assign tasks really quickly. So when you're talking about your PPM maturity level, you're going to start at level 0 and you're going to go to level 5. So the flow of this presentation is we're going to start to talk about 0 and what you need to do to get to level 5. So level 0 is you have no formal software tools in place. You don't have these tools to manage your portfolios of projects. Your next phase in order to grow is that you're going to have this simple project management tools that are used and that they are used to manage individual projects. Eventually, the next phase is that you're going to want this simple portfolio project management tool that are used to standardize these individual projects. Later, the next step is that you're going to want to formalize them for the enterprise portfolio of projects. And lastly, when you reach this level 5, you're going to have this continued improvement of software tools, and you're going to be able to collect the data in order to advance the benefits and the ease of accessing your historical information in order to improve all these different phases from the planning all the way through the execution. So just to show you what they could typically look like, when we're talking about methodologies, if you're using waterfall style, you're probably going to be using Microsoft PPM. Again, just for a quick little refresh course, is that waterfall methodology is definitely one of the most used across all the different industries. It's common from software development all the way through construction. There's many different versions of waterfall methods, but the original one really has a couple of high-level phases. You're going to talk about requirements and then design and then build, testing, and then stabilization. So here we're showing a screenshot of how that's achieved over here in Microsoft PPM. The same thing could be achieved in Dynamics PSA. Now, when we're talking about Agile, just for quick little refresher course, is that you really try to tie together all this rapid and continuous delivery, of products to the customer. Whereas the traditional methodologies such as waterfall method is kind of like a linear process, that require detailed requirements that are defined at the beginning. Agile, there's really no clear defined end product, so you just keep on running these different sprints. And we could see that Planner does have that ability. You have these backlogs, you can create these buckets and make sprints, drag and drop, just like a just like a Kanban board of what you're usually used to in Agile. And of course, here's VSTS, where this is really designed for Agile tools. So the next capability is going to be risk management. So in risk management, of course, that's all part of the natural landscape of every project is going to be risk, and SharePoint does a really great job at that. So SharePoint is a solution where you can share and manage content and knowledge and applications, and really use to empower this teamwork, that you can find this information and you can really collaborate across the entire organization. So again, at the very beginning phase, what you're going to see is that if you're starting out with risk management, you're not going to have any risks identified. You don't have contingency planning. Later on, you're going to have risks that are informally documented in text, but there's no metrics assigned to them. When the risks are realized, contingency plans are not often followed. Then the next step in your progression is that you're going to have these risks that are documented formally, and contingency plans are created, tracked, and followed. The formal risk review meetings are scheduled to ensure that risks are addressed during the project execution. The next phase after that is that you're going to have this risk identification and the contingency planning and use of the metrics in order to measure the probability impact across all the different projects. When you've reached this level 5 maturity, now you have this, again, we're talking about this historical quantitative risk scores that are utilized to develop better contingency plans going forward. So again, we're talking about this central repository having all of these risk scores at your disposal. And there's definitely no surprise that SharePoint does an extraordinary job at this, where you can identify your risks, you can score your risks, you can prioritize your risks, you can develop risk management plans and assign a risk manager, and this really does a great job at encouraging team members to report on the risks, where you don't really want any surprises. We're trucking along over here. So the next is going to be resource capacity management. And these two solutions, Microsoft PPM and Dynamics 365 PSA, do a really great job at that. Again, what we're trying to do is determine the resource needs of the organization. So you probably understand the flow of how we're going right now. So at the very lowest maturity level of 0, you have no project plan developed. The schedules that are developed then at the next phase won't have any resource allocations, or allocations that are not even entered, honestly. Then the next maturity level is that you're going to have this schedule developed with resource allocations. They may have inconsistent names. Again, we have no standardization of this process. The next level after that is that you're going to have this schedule developed with consistent resource names. And then when you reach this highest level of maturity, you have this schedule that's constantly updated with actual resource time tracking. And just to show you some ways that we can do that within Microsoft Project Online. So again, we just want to ensure that the resources are really well utilized, and productivity is really a key strategic component really for any company. So Project Online introduces this concept of capacity heat maps. It's a fairly new set of reports that at a very quick glance you can see what's over allocated or what's under allocated. When you're talking about Dynamics 365 PSA, again, we're talking about selling projects. So now you can transition, maybe if you're an account manager that's looking to put somebody on a project, or maybe you are a project manager at this professional services firm, for example, and you want to be able to request the resources for your project. So again, with project service automation, some of the capabilities inside Dynamics 365, you can really quickly match who you need with the required skills and all the proficiencies for that resource request. So you'll be able to see your calendar view, you'll be able to see your resources and their availability, and there's color coding and everything to give you all these visual cues. Okay, so now the next one is going to be schedule performance management. And again, there is no doubt probably in anybody's mind that Microsoft Project Client is without a doubt one of the leading tools when it comes to schedule performance management. I think I got this stat maybe about a year or two ago, but it has over 20 million users, and probably since then it had to grow even more. So when we're talking about this maturity level, at the very zero level, you have no formal schedule that are developed. However, the next stage is that you have a formal schedule, but you're not baselining. And you could take a look at the picture over here. We're talking about baselines. It's very important when we're talking about schedule performance management. And the next step after that is that you're going to have your formal schedule that are developed, and now you're going to start to capture baselines. And once you start to capture baselines, the next logical step is that now you're going to the plans are then going to be updated with all the scheduled data. Eventually, when you reach the highest maturity level, you're going to have this formal schedule that are developed. You're going to have your baselines captured, and you're going to update your plans with all the labor information. And again, I'm going to really highly doubt that nobody in this webinar has seen what a Microsoft project schedule looks like, but in the event that you haven't, here's a very simple PMI based project schedule. And again, this is your familiar charts. You have your Gantt charts on here, all the familiar tools that you're used to using. You have all your smart automation, which means that you can auto-populate your start and end dates based on dependencies that are linked. You can add multiple timelines. So here I'm only showing you one timeline, but you can add multiple timelines to this view. And then of course you have these baselines so that you can really compare the actual progress to the original project plan. And just as a side note, I do want to let you know that we were talking about Dynamics PSA is a pretty good tool for this waterfall type of projects. And of course what we see here is a very traditional waterfall style project. There is an out-of-the-box integration for Dynamics PSA and Microsoft Project desktop client where you can create your schedules in the tool that you probably are familiar with, which is Microsoft Project, and just integrate that right to PSA. Again, this all comes out of box. So the next is going to be cost management. So cost management really revolves around the ability to plan and control your project budget. Again, we're going to talk about these two main tools with Microsoft PPM and Dynamics 365 PSA. So cost management is highly concerned with the process of planning and controlling the budget of a project or maybe even the entire business. It includes something, activities that could be something like planning and estimating, budgeting, financing, funding, and managing. There's a lot that goes into this cost management capability. So when we talk about the maturity growth, is that, again, right, we're keeping with this trend, is that there's no formal cost management plan developed. You may or may not have that in place right now. However, the next step after that is that you're going to start to have your schedules that are developed with no cost allocations, or allocations that are not even entered. The next step after that is that you're going to want to have your schedules that are developed with this variable cost allocation. The next step after that, to reach the next level of maturity, is that now you're going to have your schedules that are developed with all cost allocations. And eventually, when you reach the top level, you're going to have your schedules that are updated with actual cost data, all times. And just to show you how some of these could come to fruition is when we're talking about cost management. Again, we're just showing you there's probably so many different reports that I could show you within the solution, but here is right inside Microsoft Desktop Client, you have an out-of-the-box report which shows you this cost overview. And the cost overview really shows you 4 key areas that you should be considered with your project. In the upper left-hand corner, you see the report that shows you the forecasted. The cost status table shows you actual cost, remaining cost, the baseline cost, and the cost and cost variances. And then of course we also have the cost status chart, and that's a compilation that shows the actual cost, which is orange, and the remaining cost, which is blue. And since I was talking about Dynamics 365 PSA, again, right out of the box, you have these reports that they consider to be the practice management dashboard. And over here, you could see a lot of different cost metrics that are important to the business, such as gross margin, total sales, billed sales, unbilled sales, etc. Again, remember, the main differentiation between Microsoft PPM and Dynamics 365 PSA is, it could be very simply put that PPM is used for internal projects and PSA is used when you're selling projects. Okay? So scope management. Scope management, now we're going to introduce some new solutions over here. We haven't talked too much about VSTS, and you're probably thinking about, how can we do scope management in Agile, right? Well, let's talk about traditional project management first before we go there. Right? So traditional project management, the scope is the work that's required to output a project's deliverables. Change happens, and project scope management includes the process to manage scope changes and make sure that the project is still going to come in on time and within budget. So Agile scope management is kind of similar, because here we're going to address things like creating the backlog, and what are the characteristics of a good backlog item, and how are we going to establish velocity or throughput, and how can we measure the burn down against the backlog, and then how are we going to deal with the changes in the backlog. So again, there is scope management, even though that we have to be running in these sprints when it comes to Agile. There is still the scope that we still have to deliver on, right? There's certain projects. It doesn't matter if you're doing Waterfall, if you're doing Agile, the project has certain tasks that needs to get done, and sometimes these tasks are going to change. So again, when we're talking about the beginning, we have no formal scope documented. So we have no idea what we're doing. We just need to do it. That's kind of phase 0. Next, we're going to want a simple scope documented and no formal scope change procedure in place. The next maturity level then after that is once you have the scope documented, but you have nothing formally as far as the scope change procedure. Obviously, the next thing is that you have this simple scope documented. Again, we're trying to take small steps. So now you have a simple scope documented and the scope change procedure in place. The next step is that now you start to have this comprehensive scope documents. And you have, but now that you took one step up in the comprehensive scope document, you have no formal scope change procedure in place. Lastly, we're going to get all complicated, and we're going to have a comprehensive scope document and a formal change procedure in place. So how can this look like in the actual solution? I mean, when we're talking about change management, it's no surprise that SharePoint does a really great way at having this. So what you see here is a screenshot of a Microsoft Project Online project site, which is built on top of SharePoint, where you can have things like a change management list right there. So you can have this change management request process that comes complete with workflows and approvals and notifications, and you can see exactly who approves what and for what cost and what's the date, etc. Then, probably wondering how this looks like in VSTS. So then you can have this Visual Studio Team Services, this whole Agile scope management, is that your team may want to attract additional work item types as requirements or as tasks as they come in. This way you can add and track them within the product and sprint backlogs or the Kanban board. And so for example, you may want to track these different types of requirements based on the target customer, or different types of bugs based on the source. And you can see right here that we have these different types. One in the screenshot, I'm showing you user stories, and the next one we have a service app. So again, scope management, if you're using this Microsoft stack, it doesn't matter which project methodology you're using, Waterfall or Agile, there are solutions that can cover them both. This is arguably one of my favorites over here. So communication management. Communication management, this is really, there's a lot of different aspects when we're talking about communication management. First and foremost, we're talking about managing the flow of information. So there's a lot of solutions out there within the Microsoft stack that can help you do that. Communication management really is, this whole planning and implementing and monitoring and revising this whole channels of communication within an organization. And also between organizations as well. So whether you're working with vendors, or you're working with partners, you're working with teammates, you have to understand, what's the strategy that we're going to have that's going to get the message across in a real disciplined way. So this Microsoft solutions provide a lot of these things that are just come out of the box. There's almost nothing that needs to be done. So Microsoft Skype for Business is a really great chat tool. I mean, we're talking on Skype for Business right now. I'm giving you this information through Skype for Business. There's Microsoft Teams, which is kind of like your social media type of place where your teams can make these small little individual teams and upload documents and upload messages, and everyone can share information that way in a way that it's actually archived. And of course we want to manage the flow of information, so you might want to have Microsoft Power BI, which is the reporting solution, this whole business intelligence suite, which allows you to make these audience-based reports. So you can aggregate all the data that you want, make it into a visually presenting type of way, and distribute it. And then of course there's Microsoft Power Apps, which I don't hear too much about from our clients, but Microsoft Power Apps is a really, really neat tool that allows you to create these mobile apps and give information right to your phone on whatever you want this information to be. So the last webinar that we did, we actually created a Microsoft Power App on the fly for an approval. And after this webinar, feel free to go back to our YouTube channel and go and check that one out. It's a really, really simple to use. It's like a drag and drop editor. So when we're talking about this whole plan on how to mature on your communication management capability, of course, we're starting out with ground zero. Ground zero means that there's no formal communication plan that exists. The next step after that is that we have this project communications that are subjective with no formal metrics. Metrics are really important. The next step is that you create these project communications that are driven with formal metrics. So now we're communicating, but what are we communicating about? What are these key performance indicators that we really need to discuss among ourselves? And then of course the next step after that is of course your key performance indicators, your KPIs, that are reported to all the levels of the organization across all the projects. So down from the team members all the way up to this executive suite, what are the key performance indicators that we want to know? And then of course the last phase of the maturity is that we have these key performance indicators that are used to manage the entire portfolio of projects, and that help the organization make better decisions about which projects they want to initiate or what they need to do going forward. So here we're going to talk about Microsoft Project Online. Of course, we integrate that with Project SharePoint, and we have a discussion board that's right there. So the discussion board, you can go ahead and have questions answered, put key information on there. The next one after that is this Microsoft Teams that I was telling you about. Of course, you can chat with everyone, but look, again, out of the box, there's this VSTS Microsoft Teams integration out of the box. So last year, the Microsoft team introduced VSTS Kanban boards right into Microsoft Teams. So that allows your team to track and create these new work items without even leaving your Teams channel. So when you create like a chat group, if you will, that's called a Teams channel. You don't have to leave that if you're working on Agile work right there. So you can have meetings on there. You can hover over somebody's icon. You can Skype for Business them right away. And then of course we have this Power Apps with Microsoft Flow, and this is a screenshot from the webinar that we did the other month, which we were sending an Outlook approval request triggered right on your phone. So again, communication management, and there's a lot of different tools within the Microsoft stack that allows you to communicate more efficiently on all your project management work. So quality control. Quality control is really about all the observation techniques and the activities that are used to fulfill the requirements for project quality. So again, you have to, you have to mention your KPIs and you need to observe them. And again, when we're talking about our Trusted IT Group managed services, anybody that enrolls into our managed services gets this Power BI health check, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, where you can go ahead and observe those metrics without even having to do any extra plumbing on. So when we're starting at the beginning, you have no repeatable processes to ensure that quality exists, that there's no quality deliverables. The next step after that is that you're going to have this basic quality process requirements that are defined, and the stakeholder inspection and approval sessions are introduced for critical deliverables. Okay. The next step after that is that you're going to have this inventory of documented processes that are broadened, and repeatable processes are applied, and stakeholder inspections and approval sessions are documented, but they're documented kind of inconsistently. The next step after that is that you're going to have this process refinement. So now you're going to refine your process, and you're going to use you're going to use that in order to measure the defects and gather the basic quality metrics that are applied across all the different projects. Last but not least, you're going to have this quality metrics that are used to identify defects in your process or in your projects, and are used to really improve the process. So again, I was telling you about the Managed Services Health Check report. So here's just a couple screenshots of there. This is just one way that Power BI helps to do this. So this is basically 9 different reports that we put in here. It comes free, no additional cost, with everyone enrolled into the managed services. The first one is our portfolio summary report. The next one is our last published reports. You can see which projects were last published and some information about that. Again, you get your health check report, which shows you some of the project information. Again, the quality on the project, on which tasks have late start, which tasks have still have generic resources in them. You see that we have a lot of red over here in our demo environment. Which tasks have no effort, which are assigned on summary tasks. So you can start to get to understand, the quality of your process. Of course, we have a resource utilization report, and there's a couple other reports. If you want to play around with this, we have a trial version. Just go to our website, trusteditgroup.com, go to the reports section, and it's embedded into the web page. I mean, that's another reason why we love Power BI so much, is because it's got a lot of legs on it, and the way that you want to distribute it. You can publish it publicly, not like you would want to do that, but for our purposes, we published our demo publicly, and you can go onto our website, play around with it, fully clickable, and drill through capabilities. Next is issue management. So issue management talks about really identifying the issues. And SharePoint, again, does a really, really great job at that. So project issues need to be identified, managed, and resolved, and SharePoint handles all that. So ground zero, no formal issue management procedures exist. The next step after that is that you're going to have issues that are documented with no standards. The next step after that is that now you're going to have issues that are documented with standards, but they're kind of dispersed all over the place. The next step after that is that you're going to have issues that are documented in a central repository. Now you can get into there and you know where everything is stored. Then last but not least, your procedures are refined and deployed for resolving and escalating inter-project and portfolio issues. So, just to show you what some of these screenshots would look like, over here is SharePoint and issue management. So there is an issue tracking list, which allows you to store information about specific issues, such as project issues, track their progresses, and then you can also assign issues, categorize them, and relate issues to each other. So Microsoft Project Online does a really great job at that, integrating with SharePoint, and you can use these SharePoint lists all over your tenant. Okay, looks like we're making pretty good time over here. Time check is 2:40, so we still have some time. I hope you guys are finding this valuable. I'm really enjoying going through these slides here. The next one is knowledge management. So knowledge management is really the process of creating, sharing, using, and managing all the knowledge and all the information that exists in your organization. I mean, that might be a little far-fetched to say that we're going to try to, eventually get all your organization on the same page, but there's tools that can help you do that. For example, I mean, these are really simple. You probably use these all day, right? Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, and Microsoft OneDrive, but they all work together in different ways, and I'll show you. So, we want to be able to create and share and use and manage all the knowledge that we have. So, we're going to start at the beginning. We have no project documentation management in place. The next step after that is that your project teams are going to begin to collect and store and share their project-related documents and information. The next step after that is now your methods and procedures to collect project documents are going to be in a central repository, and they're going to be defined on how they're going to do it. However, there won't be any formal gatekeeping and review and acceptance of project-related documents prior to publishing. The next step after that is that you're going to have these methods and procedures to collect project documents in a central repository. These methods are going to be defined, and they're going to be standardized. And you're going to say, this is how we're going to do it because this is going to make us more efficient. Then you're going to have this formal gatekeeping and review and acceptance of project-related documents before you publish it. So now someone's going to need to approve this based on certain criteria. So not everything makes it to the published world. We have to make sure that the data has good quality behind it. And of course, last but not least, we're going to have this historical project information that's going to be utilized across all projects in order to improve your planning and execution and control processes. And then, then if you really want to get serious about it, then you're going to have this advanced search engine that's put in place that's really going to allow you to, look things up and store it and collect it. So we'll talk about Project Online, of course, and Project Online has OneDrive built right into SharePoint and has the ability to store document templates even. And you can upload new documents right into the central repository. So if there is certain documents like a project charter, or maybe there's a certain, statement of work, something like that, which needs to happen. Maybe there's a business case needs to happen. You can actually create these as a template. And every time that you create this project, it triggers SharePoint to create this document library that utilizes OneDrive for Business. So now everything that you're using is all cloud. Whenever you finish it, it's saved. But before it saves, we can also trigger the workflows that someone gets a notification and someone then needs to approve it. I mean, this is a real solid procedure. Sometimes we were talking about Microsoft Planner, and I just kind of want to bring this to the forefront that even Microsoft Planner, being the lightweight solution that it is, it still has the ability to add OneNote and OneDrive for storage uses. So you could do the same thing that you're doing in SharePoint and Project Online as far as document management. You can bring that same practice over to Planner. So with it being still a lightweight tool, you can still make sure that you put your standardization around that solution as well. So next is going to be portfolio management. So portfolio management, I mean, there's no way around it. Microsoft PPM is the tool of choice over here. So it's this, portfolio management really ensures the organization, it really leverages its project selection and execution. It really refers to the central management of one or more project portfolios, really achieving its strategic objectives. So we're starting at the beginning with no formal portfolio that's defined. The next step is portfolios are going to consist of an inventory of projects. The next step is then the procedures exist for defining the portfolio. After that, you're going to find out that your teams are going to want to have procedures that exist for the ongoing management of portfolio of the portfolio. And last but not least, we're going to have these procedures that are refined and deployed for prioritizing projects. So here we're going to show you Microsoft Project Online. It's showing you your project center where you can group your projects by department or by portfolio or by the program. More commonly with portfolio management, you're going to have your portfolio prioritization over here, which is your portfolio analysis module, which grades your projects on their strategic objectives, and it analyzes their cost or the resource constraints. But look, I know I told you at the beginning that Microsoft PPM is really the key tool for doing that. But what if you're using an Agile methodology and you have this portfolio of Agile projects? Well, I still want to throw in here Visual Studio Team Services, VSTS, because it is compliant with SAFe. So SAFe is the Scaled Agile framework, and this framework really breaks down epics into features and stories, which then the teams work on sprints, and they deliver through this thing that SAFe calls program increments, or PIs, and release trains. So the portfolio backlog can track how the deliverables map to the value streams and associate budget. So you can still have this portfolio within an Agile practice as well, utilizing VSTS. Governance. So again, the simplest definition of project governance is that it is the framework that we use for effective project decision making. So the same holds true for portfolio program governance. So we have structure around decision making, around roles and people, and around the information. So we can have governance and standardization around Microsoft PPM and Dynamics 365 and Visual Studio Team Services and Microsoft SharePoint. So we're going to start at the very beginning, where there's no formal PMO or governance procedures that exist. Of course, that's always the zero maturity level, with zero. Then you're going to have this next step of your evolution, which your PMO exists without governance procedures. The step after that is that the PMO has developed an initial governance procedure. The next step is that the PMO has developed this comprehensive governance procedure. And then again, last but not least, your PMO the PMO's effectiveness is then formally measured. So when we're talking about governance, we're talking about workflows and approvals. SharePoint Designer is a really great tool, comes out of the box, and you can create these workflows and approval gates right for Project Online, right there in SharePoint. So PSA also has built-in workflows that you don't need to use SharePoint for, but there are workflows that are built right into Dynamics 365 PSA for business processes. But I also want to show you how this could look like if you're using Visual Studio Team Services. So you have this Agile workflow states. So by updating the workflow, your team really knows which items are new, which are in progress, or which are completed. Most work items really support both forward and backward from each of the workflow state. The typical workflow progression for the user story could kind of sound like this, where the product owner creates a user story in the new state with the default reason new user story. Then the team updates the status to active, and then once they complete that, then it goes to resolve, and then the user story is then moved to the close status. So there's certain ways, even around this Agile world, that you can standardize the processes and create really a strong governance around it. One of the last sections that we have over here is professional development. It looks like I'm doing pretty good on time. We have about 10 minutes left, so we can still have some Q&A afterwards. So getting back on track over here, so professional development. So we always want to make sure that we are continuously training and we're continuously developing. So Stephen Covey says we need to sharpen our sword, and the truer can't be said even today. So there's certain things that are available that helps us get better and to adopt more. So most people know about Microsoft SharePoint, and if you didn't, then this webinar definitely brought that to life. But then we also have this Microsoft Bot framework that I'm especially excited about. So when we're talking about Microsoft SharePoint, this is something that you could use to create this learning path within your organization. For example, if you're onboarding new PMs, new resource managers, new team members, you're going to want them to actually, you can't just have them start day one. go into the solution and start to plug away. You're going to need to train them. So you can have this type of a learning path right inside Microsoft SharePoint that every new person comes on, they have this onboarding training material that then certifies them to be, this PMO certified project manager or team member, that you're certified, that you know the solution and you're ready to go. This could be done maybe within the first 30 days of employment. But the same could be said for ongoing training, is that you're going to need a place to kind of keep all this information. Now, this Microsoft bot framework is something pretty neat. It's fairly new to Microsoft, and what this is that you can build and connect really intelligent bots that interact with all your users in a pretty natural way. I mean, as natural as a robot could be, from your website or app right to Cortana or Skype or Teams or Office 365 emailing, or there's other avenues like other chat programs like Slack and Telegram and Facebook Messenger, Skype for Business. So we'll show you what that looks like in a second. But following with our path, we have at the very beginning, the role of project management is not defined within your organization. There's no formal guidelines and procedures that exist for professional development. Later on, what you're going to have is that now the role of project manager is beginning to be defined and professional development plans are identified. However, we're just talking about it, but no formal career path or programs or reward or recognition programs are really placed. Then project management education, mentoring, and training programs are now deployed. They now become available. The career path and programs and rewards and recognition programs are beginning to be defined. And then we have our project management certification program, which is defined and deployed. What you ultimately want to strive for when you get to your highest level of maturity is that you want to have this continued improvement of training and mentoring, and you want to keep improving on your skills. You want to keep having your career program so that you understand what's the next step in your career. This is really important. I mean, when you get into the role, we have to know, where is the road going to lead us and what are the opportunities that we have. So we talked about the SharePoint learning path. I mean, you can probably envision what that looks like. You probably have a very similar type of intranet with your HR team, internal with your organization. But maybe you guys haven't seen this project bot, which I'm really excited to introduce. We have a working prototype that we're working with Microsoft right now to develop. It is deployed internally, so I could share some of these screenshots with you. Here is a screenshot of our project bot, which is deployed to Microsoft Teams, which answers specific questions. It crawls the web. It crawls our internal database to spit out the right answers to your question. So you can say, how do I create a new project? How do I link these tasks? What's my risk status, etc. And it's going to go look into your tenant and it's going to spit out that answer to you. So here's how it looks like right here in Microsoft Teams. We have it deployed in, this is actually Facebook chat. So if you go into our Facebook, not yet, but this is still sort of prototype, but it's going to be released fairly soon, and you'll definitely be hearing about it. Here is a Facebook chat where you can just go into our Facebook and ask questions without even having it to be on the Microsoft stack, but this is using the Microsoft bot framework to develop it. And then here is the screenshot of it working on Skype, and we also have it working on Skype for Business. So again, this is something to really help out your team to answer these questions, to make sure that you know what you're doing when you're in it, and this is what Microsoft Bot Framework is really all about. So again, thanks for joining with this this webinar. I crammed a lot of information. I really hope that you took some notes. If you didn't, you know that I always record these and I put them on our YouTube channel. I put them on our website. So feel free to watch that afterwards. I'll be following up to see if anybody needs any help afterwards. But I do want to let you know that some of the next steps, if you're wondering what you could do as a follow-up to this webinar, is that now that we are a cloud solution provider, we can provide free customized software trials. So we will help you configure it to your specific needs for your PLC to make sure if it fits right within your organization. So, of course, try it before you buy it type of a thing. So send us an email at info@trusteditgroup.com. We'll help set up your customized software trial. Partner-led trials are what they called, and we can definitely help you out with that. And of course, we do want to offer you a free assessment based on what you saw here. So feel free to reach out to me at info@trusteditgroup.com or reach directly out to me at daniel.norkin@trusteditgroup.com, and we'll set up a free assessment on all these capabilities that we spoke about. We can come up with recommendations and solutions that can help you get to this next maturity level, and we'll see if we can get this going on a quarterly basis so that we can, show your PMO growth and show your maturity level. But again, the first assessment is free on us, so feel free to ask us questions, and we're here for you. Thank you so much, everyone.